Chapter 25 Camaraderie. The Fourth Hell, Dread's Keep.
"Well, would you look at that?"
The heavily accented voice of a long-haired and widely smiling Lycani announced.
"The son of Commander Jameson, come to save us all."
Commander Emilio Grease stepped forward and placed his hands on the sides of Crinan's shoulders, leaning in and kissing each of his cheeks.
"My, have you grown, young Centurion. I remember when you stood no taller than my waist. Oh, the time flies."
The man's eyes looked heavy, undoubtedly from his experiences in the years he had spent in the Hells. Crinan nodded respectfully to Emilio. The Lycani had been Crinan's commander for a good portion of his life. He died shortly after Crinan and Malinka were rescued from the Wilshire Highlands.
"And young Malinka Emil,"
Emilio turned to her, his smile not reducing its width.
"So good to see you have found yourself such a capable warrior to fight alongside. I trust Jameson has been of assistance."
Malinka looked over at Crinan for a moment with a mischievous expression. Crinan rolled his eyes in response, but Malinka ultimately nodded her head.
"He has done a marvelous job, Commander,"
Malinka said.
"Without him, we wouldn't have ever been able to get this far."
"I am overjoyed to hear this,"
Emilio said, and then turned toward a campfire burning behind him. His tail swished from side to side as he walked, and Crinan snorted. He remembered Emilio was the first Lycani he had ever met as a child, and at his young age he couldn't keep his eyes off the commander's tail. Emilio held out his hands, beckoning Crinan and Malinka to take a seat amongst a circle of people. Crinan recognized many of them. They were former commanders, famous knights, scholars, and strategists. As he sat, one called out to him.
"Look at you, young Crinan."
Ora Souls, the long-dead mother of one of his closest friends, Aelia, said. She was a fairess with thick brown tangled hair and a gentle smile.
"I remember when I first met you. My beloved daughter introduced us. Do you remember?"
"Somewhat,"
Crinan replied with a nod. "I remember you were very kind."
"Oh, stop."
Ora waved her hand at Crinan and looked away.
Can you tell me of Elia? Is she happy?"
"Yes,"
Crinan nodded.
"She is. She's grown into a fine person."
"It warms my heart to hear this,"
Ora said.
"I thank you."
"And you, granddaughter?"
Vasily Emil, a hulk of an elf with a mess of blonde hair that matched his thick beard, declared with a strong Camlosian accent.
"My heart weeps to see you in this dreadful place, but I also feel much pride for you. Did you die honorably?"
"I did, grandfather,"
Malinka replied with a warm smile.
"I took many with me."
"Let us pray that those you killed do not find you here, then,"
Vasily replied, followed by a bark of a laugh.
"You were a baby when I died. I am glad that you grew to be a strong warrior."
"Thank you, grandfather."
Malinka nodded reverently to her kin.
"I am proud to have brought you honor."
"It is a joy to see the rekindling of old bonds,"
Emilio said, nodding along with everyone's words.
"A good reminder that such connections can surpass our mortal lives."
Emilio hummed gently to himself as he mulled over his own thoughts. He held his hands out to the fire, a motion learned from his time on Duran. In the Hells, heating oneself made little sense.
"Since the arrival of young Jameson, we have experienced significant changes," Emilio continued. "For now, it seems the days of us being the prey have ended. We have found power. We have the capability to fight back against the demons, or players as they are referred to. I have watched, I have fought, and in this short time we have driven a number of the players into the accursed keep just over the ledge. They wait there, unable to escape, numbers too insignificant to fight back. Our assault will come soon, once we learn what you know, young Jameson."
Crinan looked up at the sound of his name, and then over to Malinka. He didn't know what to tell Emilio, and he found himself even more distracted as he watched the light of the fire dance on the skin of Malinka's face. The image forced his mind to recall memories from 7 years prior. Crinan saw Malinka sitting next to him. He heard the sounds of the fire crackling and the nocturnal animals darting through the woods, but they were outweighed by the sound of her soft breathing. She leaned into him as she slept, the top of her head just under his chin. His scratched-up arms were wrapped around her, their fingers interlocked, and he stared into the fire. He wondered if he ever actually wanted to leave the Woolshire Highlands. He envisioned starting a life out there. He fantasized about just living in peace with Malinka, maybe growing a cabbage farm and never returning to their old lives. Crinan remembered smiling and feeling a sense of peace in all the chaos.
Crinan, Emilio said, pulling Crinan free of his thoughts. Jameson, what can you tell us?
Me? Crinan asked, shaking his head as he tried to recall the last thing he had heard Emilio say.
Yes, Crinan, Emilio replied. What do you know?
I don't know much, Crinan admitted. A few of those around the circle slumped their shoulders. Some leaned back and stared up at the starless sky, while others simply sat and continued to listen. I know what I've been told, and I understand only half of that.
Please try to explain anything you can, Emilio encouraged. Anything should be of use.
A person by the name of Sage is speaking to me from home, from Duran. Crinan sifted through his memories, trying to think of anything relevant to say. He says I need to get to the 7th level of the Hells, that there's some kind of, I think he called it a rift that will get us out of here. He said a bunch of stuff I don't understand about nones and afterscapes and a bunch of other technical shit, but I couldn't repeat any of it.
Sage, Emilio repeated, looking around the circle. A name I do not know, but perhaps the name is not what matters. What is important is the information this sage individual has given you. The 7th level.
Emilio once again looked at everyone else.
Not an easy undertaking. By my understanding, there are many challenges that must be conquered prior to unlocking the 7th level.
We've made it this far, Crinan said. If that's where I need to go, then I can get there.
Is that optimism?
Malinka asked, raising an eyebrow.
Crinan Jameson. How very unexpected.
Shut up, Crinan replied. Malinka grinned at him and snorted a laugh.
The key to the 5th level lies within Dread's Keep.
Zywayne, a younger-looking brown-haired elf who sat next to a nearly identical female elf, declared.
'Tis why we are trying to secure the castle. Correct, Lord Zywayne, Emilio nodded. If we can take Dread's Keep from the players and from whatever creatures that dwell within, then we can take a major step toward getting you to the 7th level.
I haven't seen the keep or whatever, Crinan said. Where is it?
Over the ledge, child, Zywayne replied.
Crinan found it odd that the young person was calling him child, but then he remembered that Zywayne was the son of Supreme Commander Zion. His twin sister Zybel sat next to him, giggling after every word he spoke. Crinan assumed that she was at least near touched.
Dread's Keep is the seat of Thornscale, Lord of Terror, and King of the 4th level.
Thornscale, Crinan repeated with a snicker. What edgelord named him? Laughter erupted around the circle, and Vasily spoke up.
Some Govian dog, no doubt.
He turned his head and spat, the flavor of his words clearly displeasing to him. Crinan watched as some of the saliva stuck to his beard and a smile tugged on the corner of his lips.
Thornscale is said to be a great winged demon, Zywayne said. The plates that cover his body are supposed to be nearly impervious to physical attack.
What about bullets? Crinan asked, raising one of his pistols. Seems to work on everyone else.
I find it hard to imagine bullets doing any damage to Thornscale, Zywayne said, his eyes narrowing on Crinan.
But it may be worth a shot, Ander added with a toothy grin. The Black Knights all turned and looked at him with serious expressions, and Ander quickly lowered his head. My apologies, mighty warriors. Please continue. Okay, then. Crinan shrugged and holstered his weapons.
You said there were players protecting the keep.
Yes, Emilio replied. We drove them within the walls. They are waiting for us there. There are dozens of them, maybe 100 or so. Our numbers far outweigh theirs, but they have the castle walls protecting them. Once we get through the gates, however, they will quickly fall.
Do not forget, Lord Emilio.
Lady Aura spoke up, looking to the fallen commander.
They know the range of their abilities. They know how to fight in this place. We only know how to fight back home. We must not underestimate them.
They die easy,
Vasily Emil snorted.
I killed 3 with same stone. We have skill. We have real experience. We know true combat. They are soft children playing game.
Both of your observations are correct, Lord Emilio said with a nod. In life we all experienced many battles, and not a soul here failed to take our share of lives. We trained every day. We know how to fight. But as Lady Aura so wisely cautioned, they too know how to fight in their own way. This is their land, their battleground. They have skills and magics we do not yet understand. We must make wise choices to minimize loss.
They just appear again at first level, Vasily Emil argued. Ours do not die. Only Govian dogs die.
They're made prisoners, Krynen added. Everyone turned their heads toward him, and he nodded awkwardly.
What do you mean?
Aura Souls asked, raising an eyebrow. I mean, when we kill them, they can't escape, or log out as they call it. They turn into prisoners. It's like they die in the real world. Krynen thought back to killing Big Dick and felt a sliver of guilt.
So, just like in real life then.
Aura Souls said.
The more we kill, the weaker they get.
Yes, Zywayne added with a hint of excitement in his voice. If they turn into prisoners when they die, then they undoubtedly start at the first level, just like we used to, naked and unskilled. They would be of no threat without their abilities and weapons. The young-looking elf grinned and stroked his chin. Oh, this is fortuitous indeed. If we can kill them, as you suggest, young Krynen, then every victory will weaken the enemy eventually to a point where we hold the power. Not only that, but as we kill those in the hells, we are also delivering a blow to the Govian mainland and helping our kin back home. A murmur passed through the circle. The idea that they could continue the fight that they had originally died for and strike back at those that had killed and tortured them for so long was very appealing. For years, lifetimes for some, the Black Knights in the circle had felt useless. Some had even succumbed to the thought that their lives had been meaningless, both back on Duran and in the Hells. The news that Krynen provided and the efforts of Sage and Lukas rekindled a fire within them, and they as one stood. The first step in our road to salvation is Dread's Keep, Zywayne said, looking into the eyes of every face around the fire. My father founded Black Knight. He enabled us to walk this road. It is our responsibility to continue what he started. It appears that the Hells is simply a single stop that we all have made. No more will our damnation be a roadblock that hinders us, but a boon that empowers us. A chill ran down the spines of every knight that stood around the fire. Zywayne Phoenix was very much his father's son. Every word he spoke fed the hungry souls of the fallen Black Knights in his presence. As Krynen stood, he noticed that the soldiers that hadn't been a part of the campfire had stopped their work and huddled around them. They bunched up, listening closely, and for a moment, Krynen felt like he was a part of a singular organism with all of them. In life we stood for something, Zywayne shouted, looking not only at those in the circle, but the infantry surrounding them. For years, decades, we have rotted in the darkness. We have burned, bled, and been ripped apart by none other than Govia, the very ones we fought against back home. Today this ends. Our reckoning has come. No more will we succumb to the woes of perdition. No more will we be held down by our enemies. This is fate, my friends. All of our destinies are linked together. With great honor, I embrace you as I declare us all the newest bastion of Black Knight. We are the damned ones, the forgotten, but never again will we fuel these flames that nip at our feet. No, my friends, my family. From this day forward, we will be the harbingers of salvation to those weary souls who surround us. Any who seek respite will find it in our company. We are the angels, brave enough to dive into the belly of Duran. We are the warriors who will take up arms against the darkness. All of you, turn your ear to hear me.
Zywayne paused for a moment as his eyes scanned the small army.
We are Black Knight, and I hereby welcome you all to Base Seraphim.